Hello, and welcome to our discussion on the future of entertainment. I'm Janet Lenahan, and I have the pleasure of serving as Dean of the Frank G. Zarb School of Business. Joining us this evening is a panel of business executives spanning the media, sports, and entertainment sectors to share their insights on how the entertainment business is transforming to meet the ever-changing consumer demand. These experts are all truly impressive and bring a wealth of experience in the sport and entertainment industry. Let me tell you a little bit about the background of each. Karen Mendoza is the Chief Business Development Officer at Legendary Shift, a leader in entertainment, sports, and learning for the youth market. In her role, Karen drives global and national partnerships and strategic initiatives for their subsidiary companies. She also advises on women-led social impact enterprises and early-stage startup companies. Karen previously spent a decade and a half at Nintendo of America, holding roles across the sales and marketing division. She began her career as a public relations manager in the entertainment industry, working at Fox Interactive and Fox Sports Interactive, responsible for media events like the Billboard Music Awards. Scott Novis is the founder and chief creative officer of Bravous eSports, which offers recreational youth esports leagues. Scott is an experienced innovator who holds 2 engineering degrees and is named on 11 different patents. He was formerly vice president and general manager of Disney's Nintendo-focused game development studio, Fall Line Studio, and global marketing manager at Motorola. And our final panelist is one of our very own execs in residence here at the Zarb School, Mr. Hank Ratner. Hank is the CEO of the investment firm and consulting practice Ratner Ventures. In addition to his role as CEO, he also sits on the board of directors of many organizations, including MSG Networks and the Garden of Dreams Foundation. He has spent nearly 30 years, he spent nearly 30 years at Cablevision, Cable Systems Corporation, and most recently as its vice chairman. He was president and CEO of the Madison Square Garden Company and chief operating officer of AMC Networks, where he helped lead each company through unprecedented periods of dynamic and enduring growth. He recently served as president and CEO of Independent Sports and Entertainment, overseeing its transition into an integrated sports, media, entertainment, and management company, representing more than 300 NBA, NFL, and MLB athletes. We are truly grateful for his service to the Zarb School. So let me turn it over now to our moderator tonight, Dr. Andy Forman, who is an associate professor of marketing and international business and teaches and also conducts research on consumer behavior, sports, and nonprofit marketing. Andy.
Thank you, and welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today. It's hard to overstate the extraordinary challenges that business and society has faced over the past year, and perhaps no industry has been more profoundly affected by the pandemic than sports and entertainment, and really having to reinvent themselves on the fly to get through the past year. We're starting to see some breaks in the cloud, and hopefully in the coming year, there'll be a movement, something back to normalcy or a new normal. And where I thought we would start today is taking a look at what that new normal may look like, especially with live venues. And we're seeing, even in the New York area now, fans returning in limited numbers. I guess Texas is going to be a bit of an experiment because I think they've listed their capacity limits entirely starting soon. So my first question, maybe where we could start today, is what is going to basically be the fan experience? How will the fan experience in venues likely change? How can sports entities and venue managers instill confidence in fans that they can come back safely and still have an enjoyable time and not have the safety measures maybe put a crimp in their experience? And so that's my first question is, how do you see the coming year? And then maybe you can talk about what would be the lasting changes that we might see even post-pandemic.
Okay, maybe I'll go first if that's okay. Now, I
think please.
I think what we found out through the pandemic is something we took for granted, and that's how important sports and music and entertainment are in general. You know, we all got placed in lockdown. We're all in homes, and you can't find anything to watch. And your sports team isn't on, and your new shows aren't being produced, and your live entertainment isn't happening. And that was such a companion to always help people to get through times it wasn't available. So I think one thing is the general public has learned how important that is to society, how important it is to our culture, and how missed it was. So here we are today, and we're fortunate in that there have been many breakthroughs with the virus. The vaccine has come into place, and it's allowed a bit of life as we knew it to start resuming, but it's just the beginning, and it's still very slow. So, you know, if we had this conversation last week, we wouldn't have been able to talk about fans being in Madison Square Garden or Barclays Center, but we can say that this week. And you talked about technology. You know, New York State jumped on it. They came up with something called an Excelsior Pass. It was used Tuesday night for the Rangers game, the first game back with fans. And the state, if you cooperate with them, is able to indicate in a pass, either written or on your smartphone, whether you've been vaccinated, in which case, if it's still 90 days from the vaccination, you can go into a live venue, or whether you've recently had a negative COVID test. And if you have recently, I think it's considered 3 or 5 days, you can go into that venue. And we got to see how things are changing. Now, I think capacity was 2,000 or 2,500 out of, you know, almost 20,000. But we have to start, and we have to get confidence back. But the one thing I'm sure of is that people who run these venues and these live events know how to take care of their customers. You know, that's the business they're in. It's all about customer care, and they're quite professional and quite responsible about it. And the challenges they face are the same challenges the hospitality industry faces, the travel industry faces, and really anyone who, you know, has public congregation of consumers. So we're all in it together. We all have to figure it out. We all have to be responsible, prudent, listen to the science, and be able to bestow that confidence in the customers so we can gradually build up and be back to where we were before this all happened at some point.
Yeah, I think that's great, Hank. I think I'll add to it that I think the innovation that we've all been forced to look at in 2020 in terms of physical venues, and certainly I feel like overnight everybody, you know, had to quickly figure out their own technology needs at home, at work, etc. And in terms of, you know, sporting venues or any sort of entertainment venue, I think one of the best things that came out of it is this idea of it doesn't have to be an either or proposition for delivering a unique experience online or on site. It can actually be both. And in fact, I think, you know, that mixture or that blend of both the online access while also the on-site physical access is tremendous. You know, here I'm based here in California, and you know we're pretty much still on lockdown mode, but yet I feel like some of our favorite professional sports teams, the Warriors, you know, I feel like even more engaged as a fan because of some of the unique experiences that they have brought for, you know, the viewing audience and the spectators at home, which is great. And then finally, is because, as Hank pointed out, how greatly we missed our sports and entertainment and musical artists live and in person. I think it also drove this idea of content creators, right? Because we couldn't consume anybody else's content, we created our own, and I think that's also been a great thing for the industry.
I was going to add the piece from, we look at the big venues, but I think the other thing that impacted is the small groups, because, you know, music and sports, obviously there's very large industries, but those run through the whole culture. And we were just talking about this beforehand, that things seem to be breaking into thirds. And I saw some interesting data the other day where the West Coast, Seattle in particular, a group I was talking to of entrepreneurs had completely embraced virtual events. Like they were posting the highest rating scores for any events they'd ever done. I'm in Arizona and our virtual events did not rate nearly as highly, and the local groups could not wait to get back together. So I think we're going to see this weird split. I don't know if it's weird, but a third of people that can't wait to get back together anywhere, anytime, like let's go. People that are going to be more cautious and people that are going to wait a lot longer. And I think that's the thing of what elements of virtual are going to be here for the long run, because there are companies out there saying we have no plans to get back into an office, if at all, until 2022. So the shift, how much of this shift is going to persist and how will it affect the other venues? But I think, to your point, we're seeing innovative systems come in to try to do everything we can to make the participants feel safe and to have a safe event, right? Nobody wants a super spreader. So, but we all, like, we're ready to get back together. We just see the data coast to coast in our other venues and businesses. People are like, let me know when it's safe, I'm there. Like, there's a demand.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think they're mutually exclusive, though. I think a lot of people have learned how to live life virtually, whether it's work or pleasure. And many will continue to do that, but many also will still go to experience a live event and have the experience of being there. And I think it's just going to grow the virtual, which was growing anyway, but we learned things like, you know, the panel we're participating on today, that this can be done in all the Zoom calls we have. And I think it will have a profound change going forward in workplace and workplace travel. But I think, again, it will enhance entertainment. It was going in this direction anyway. It's been greatly now accelerated by what's happened in the pandemic, and it will continue to do so. I mean, even the technology in the arenas. Years ago, you know, you tried to have contactless, frictionless ticketing, purchasing, goes right to your phone. There's your ticket. You can enter the arena. They can scan your phone. You don't have to hand them a ticket and go back and forth. You can order food from your phone to your seat. You can pay for it in their transaction. So a lot of that is going to be greatly beneficial as people start coming back after the pandemic, because the need to actually touch is a lot less than it has been before. And I think also, as Karen was saying, you know, your ability to sit in a live event and still put together social groups who are all in the building together, who can communicate in the building in ways that you couldn't before. And, you know, you can go and get highlights on your phone. You can go, and in certain states where it's legal, you can gamble on the event you're at on your phone. So the coming together of technology and live sports and entertainment has been happening, but clearly greatly accelerated. And these trends will continue.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point. I think you're right. Instead of it being either or, what we're probably going to see is an evolution where they enrich each other to the extent of what you're talking about. You know, the virtual, everything we learned about virtual makes the in-person events better. And then taking the in-person, and to Karen's point, spreading it out so even the fans that can't attend feel connected to the event. That just seems like trends are going to only pick up momentum.
Right. And what history has showed us is the more immersive that virtual event is, the more people want to go to the live event too.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
Yeah, which really shows, for example, that one of the things I guess was a little counterintuitive was when people were really locked down and staying at home, and sports did come back after a period where there was virtually no sports. The experts were thinking that there was a lot of pent-up demand and that people would be, you know, the ratings would be the highest they've ever been. But yet I think the absence of the fans in the arena was one of the things that contributed to the fact that the ratings actually declined for a lot of the major sports. Even the NBA finals were down from previous years. And I think that the fans really, even when they're viewing at home, there is a different experience when they see fans in the stands and getting excited. And it's not as a compelling television product when people aren't in the stands and you're watching cardboard cutouts of dogs in the stands.
Oh, Yeah, really interesting. I have an advantage, right? I work in the industry, so I know when it's a soundtrack, and they put the video games from MLB The Show to have fan sounds during the baseball season. And the first time they had live fans at a playoff game, I remember watching it with my son. It was just like, are there people watching that game? And I just felt my own interest to shoot through the roof because there were live fans actually cheering to and responding to what was happening on the field. And as good as the software is, it's not as good as people. And I think you're right that fan, it was an interesting thing to me because when are you ever going to run that experiment, right? Let's have nobody be allowed to go and we'll play the games and see if we like that better or not. And it was like, it's definitely better with people.
Right. And while that's true, you really have to note the heroic effort of the NBA leading the charge, creating a bubble, figuring out a way to pick up sports and get it back for really the good of everybody. And they really did it quite wonderfully. The ratings might not have been what they had hoped for, but the fact that they brought live basketball back and they did it safely, and that was really special.
Yeah, I think, and we've said it a couple of times already, that human emotion is contagious. And again, the fan experience, and nothing quite like being there live in person. But one career or a job that became even more under the spotlight is that audio engineer who is timing it to kind of, as Scott was saying, replicate that human emotion, that fan, spectator crowd noise. And I remember watching some of the, ESPN commentators even kind of compliment the audio engineers who are trying to make the best of the televised event to make it, make the best of the situation for sure.
And those commentators usually were not in the arena. They were sitting in the
Yes.
studio somewhere.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think your point, Hank, is like all the sports were really trying to serve their communities. Like it was, obviously business, people can get cynical about things, but the interactions we had, like we had done a series with the Dallas Stars, like right at the start of this. And one of their highest priorities is we can't engage with our fans. What can we do? And we ended up doing a NHL hockey series for the fans. And it gave them an opportunity to engage with and connect with their fan base. So we saw exactly what you're talking about was this. Everybody sort of set everything aside going, how do we get back together? How do we recreate so people have something to connect? And maybe it didn't turn out the way I wanted it. And boy, I didn't see anybody pull any punches to do their best, to put out the best possible product and the best possible experience, given really unprecedented limitations.
One of the challenges, we've been talking mostly from the standpoint of the fans, but another major public that the sports entertainment entities have to be concerned about are sponsors. And a lot of the sponsorship activations and tie-ins happen on site. And here we went through an entire season where sponsors weren't able to have that element of face-to-face contact with fans and engage them in that way. And I think that's another challenge too, in terms of that they face, properties face in terms of keeping the sponsors on board and engaged and working together going forward and maintaining those relationships. So,
I think, Andrew, in terms of sponsors, what we were seeing in our company, in our business, is that the digital marketing investments were definitely maintained and even increased. So the fact that, in our company, we've got an eSports organization, and we provided a lot of online eSports tournaments. We definitely were hearing from sponsors, product sponsors, and brand partners who wanted, wanted the audience that we were serving and just to get in front of them. So from a digital marketing investment and sort of brand awareness, they were definitely going towards digital activations and pulling back, of course, on any sort of in-person live event, experiential type on-site activations. But these days, I think they're slowly kind of reevaluating when that will be. And the best date I'm hearing personally through some of the partners that we've been talking to is right around August, September. You know, we might be ready to kind of reinvest and look at those sponsorships for in-person and live events, which will be fantastic.
You know,
Right, and that would
the
coincide.
sponsors are, you know, very smart. You know, they know what they want to accomplish from business. Obviously, their business changed during these periods as well. But, you know, as Karen said, the ability to go and activate your digital assets in ways that you hadn't done before. You have the same list of consumers who your sponsors want to reach. You come up and create virtual events. You can go, you know, it tested people's creativity and people came up for the charge. So there was a lot to learn that will be used going forward. But you know, those experiences are still premium to what sponsors want to accomplish often when they're, you know, partnered with sports team, concerts, events, you know, things of that nature.
Great, thank you. So turning our attention a little bit more to esports, and esports has been lauded as one of the few industries that really successfully adapted to reach consumers even while they were staying home, and by the nature of esports. And I think most of our audience is probably familiar with esports. I know, and people in my generation, since I teach this course, I spend a lot of time explaining to people of my age how esports is a thing and what it is. So maybe a little bit of an overview of esports and how it evolved and what they are doing going forward in terms of broadening the appeal to more of a mainstream audience, even more than they have been able to so far.
Right. If you don't mind, I'll field that one. I think, you know, esports is not a thing. I try to tell people it's like sort of in the Olympics where you have the decathlon, it's like 10 things. It's more like track and field than one particular sport, but it's competitive video gaming. And there are cases people argue that goes back to the 70s. It really, really became a thing with the rise of the mobile online battle arena and the really big purses. So when people could start making serious money competing, all the dominoes just started to fall into place. And what I think is more than any other sport of any kind is how global it is. And there's global participation from every major country. And FIFA would probably be the closest, except the US doesn't have the same density of, like, you know, esports is just sort of universally within the people that are into it. It's huge. I think it was in 2019, more people watched the international than the Super Bowl and the Final Four combined. So the viewership is phenomenal globally, and it's happening fast. We're seeing colleges now putting programs in place. When we launched our program, I think there was 20 schools that had tuition assistance for esports programs, and at the beginning of 2020, it was over 220. And, you know, the high school market, it's all the infrastructure is getting into place, but at the end of the day, it's competitive video gaming, and it is, you know, split across about 6 or 7 really big games. There's 2 that dominate, 3 games dominate the earnings, Fortnite, League of Legends, and Dota 2, and then probably another dozen that are sort of fighting for 3rd place in popularity. But it's $1 billion industry already. It's funny, I was laughing about the adaptation, and it was like, I think the whole adaptation was like, yeah, you can watch me play too. Come on, let's go. I mean, we've been online, 250 million people a night playing Fortnite. They used to dealing with a lot of people online. So the infrastructure has been there for quite a while. And it was just sort of this perfect storm of, for a lot of gamers, not much change. They're like, oh, I'm staying home playing with my friends. And that, it really introduced a lot of other people to what was happening in that space.
I will add, though, that I think also the attraction of, and you know, Andrew, you asked the path to mainstream esports becoming mainstream. It's happening. if it hasn't already. Certainly, as Scott alluded to, the Asian countries and even the European countries, they were, I feel like they were kind of deep into the competitive video game scene already. And I think of, countries like South Korea, China, the Philippines, and then again, the European countries, they were already gathering around all of these games that Scott mentioned. And I think the addition of the whole notion of the eSports arena, we started this talk about the physical venue spaces, but when now, we have businesses and sponsors looking to build out eSports arena, that whole attraction of the now it is becoming a spectator sport, right? And even the teamwork aspect of, a team-based game like League of Legends becomes very, very interesting. I think, I said to this group earlier on that I definitely see the parallel path of esports following the same sort of, evolution of traditional sports. One thing that's still lagging behind in esports is the inclusion of women, minority, people of color, LGBT. But now we are esports is even more inclusive for these type of players, the women gamers, the people of color, minorities, and LGBT, and really there is no, you don't have to have a women's basketball team versus a men's basketball team. You just have NBA 2K, and it can be a female player on that NBA 2K team, which is super exciting. So I think while I do see and observe that it is following the same trajectory as traditional sports, I think it's, like we've said all along, it's even accelerating faster and progressing faster than traditional sports.
Right. I mean, eSports, which it's probably one of the largest growth segments in sports and entertainment. And it certainly was aided by the pandemic and people staying home and being able to go and, again, have this experience with people while you're at home. I think maybe it was 2013 when the first eSports experience sold out Staples Arena. My year might not be right. I think it's about 2015, sold out Madison Square Garden. I mean, people just didn't think that way, but that's how long ago we're going back. And again, the growth potential is huge. And as Karen was saying, and I add to it, only certain number of people can play basketball and only certain amount of people can go play baseball, et cetera. But when it comes to esports, the population is far larger who have the potential to go there, and people participate, and you can do it at all sorts of levels. And then with the advent of sports, online gambling and all, and esports, I mean, the potential here is in many ways larger than most other segments of sports and entertainment.
Yeah, actually, to touch on what you talked about, Andrew, about it becoming mainstream, the audience for esports is largely participants. They're gamers. They're people that play the games themselves. I mean, I think for games to really become mass market, there is a learning curve they're going to have to flatten. Is some of these things are tough to learn to watch. I think somebody once told me, like, to learn to watch Overwatch takes a good 15 minutes of concentration with a coach telling you how to watch the game so you know what's going on. And I think that the professional sports have done a much better job of helping new people that have never played appreciate and be entertained and engaged by what's happening. And that's a huge opportunity for esports. But if it's this big already, dominated by people that play, what's the potential when they bring in the casual fan? Because that's one of the things we've heard is this is the year I think the casual fan started to look at it and go, what, there's something worth watching? What is that? Tell me about it. And I think that'll be the tipping point when you start having as many non-gamers or people that don't play that game be just as interested in the game as the people that are, hardcore players of it.
Yeah, it's probably true across most sports, in terms of there being a learning curve. And since it's a newer entity, and so the people who are coming onto it a bit later, certainly there's a learning curve for them to really appreciate the nuances of what they're watching. And certainly, I think all my life there's been various people who have tried to educate me about what's going on during a cricket match, and I've just never been able to figure out, no matter what they say. So I think maybe there's a critical period in life where you can learn the nuances of sports, and it's something that certainly has a younger market. But following up on one point that Karen made about it predominantly being a sport, it's been the province of younger males. And I think there was even a little bit of negative publicity in terms of negative reactions of people who weren't necessarily young males infiltrating social networks and groups. So I was wondering what type of proactive measures esports leagues might take or are taking to help be more inclusive and to facilitate more female players and people of color, LGBT and so forth, where you say they were lagging. And is there a concerted effort or outreach programs to bring the games and appreciation of those games to other markets?
I can speak a little bit on that. I'm sure, Karen, you have quite a bit to add. So one of the things that we zeroed in on, and it doesn't get a lot of play, is that a lot of the high-end esports games are PC games, and there's a term they call the digital divide. And it is breathtaking the budget professional gamers set to their computer equipment to stay cutting edge. And that works against, it's the equity piece. How do you have access if somebody else is spending thousands or tens of thousands of dollars a month on hardware and you can't do that? We started designing our programs around console games because they're static. So everybody's on the same platform. It's even. And what we started researching, so there's two parts of this, is 9 out of 10, I got this from Jane McGonigal, 9 out of 10 parents will go watch their kid play a traditional sport. 1 out of 10 will play a video game with them. So part of the culture that we're seeing in esports is what we got by default. Where were the mentors? Where were the adults? Where were the parents? Where were the coaches? All that infrastructure is actually starting to come to play now. And so we have the opportunity to shape the culture to be what we want it to be. When we went into the schools and we took the consoles, classrooms are 50% girls and 50% boys. We would put the games in front of them and go, what do you want to play? And a phenomenal game that it's not a big esport game, but it's competitive video gaming, is a game like Splatoon. The schools were happy with it, and the boys and girls both picked, that's what we want to compete in, and we set up leagues, and they play and compete. And I think they've got 33 to 35% of their professional gamers, the top tier gamers, are actually female. So we're starting to crack the code on how to create a more inclusive environment. My premise is I want it to be radically inclusive in the sense that I think it was the Aspen Institute said by January 2020, 70% of 11-year-olds, boys and girls, are falling out of team sports. And we don't want video games to be another place where you can't play. We want to make sure somebody shows up, they get to play. There's something for them to play and some for them to compete with. And that's some of the things where we see esports could be with the right guidance. And that's why we want the schools to participate, right? Bring the values to the sport and let's shape it to be the type of competition where boys and girls can compete as equals and respect each other. I'm like, what could go wrong with that? Why could that be a bad thing? Let's get more of that going on in our communities.
Yeah, I think I'm so proud of the work that Scott and his team at Bravous eSports are doing, and certainly in the legendary Shift Company with Game Truck, Bravous, and some of the other subsidiaries we have, because this idea of a responsible, healthy community is what I think is at the heart of how initiatives around how do we make sure that people who want to participate as a player, as a spectator, as a parent, or again, player in this sport, esports, feels safe, feels protected, knows that other people in their community, again, whether online or on site, are they get the respect that they deserve. They that everybody is behaving at their best. And it, for our company, we really, part of our corporate values and the mission and vision of our team is that we our moderators, our community moderators, all the way from our shoutcasters to our TOs to the customer care employees, to take our event organizers all the way through our journey with us, is well versed in looking for that type of toxic type behavior that we do not condone in our communities. And I know there are many esports organizations out there who have built platforms that use AI bots or automated bots, chat bots that can scan and filter that out. And that is a great initiative, and hats off to all the computer scientists to make that happen. But in addition to that, we firmly believe that to supplement the bots with an actual human moderator to scan for that language, to scan for the all caps, to scan for the banter between players, between people in chat who are engaging, is super duper important as well. So I always look for, whenever I'm joining a new community, again, online or on site, you kind of have to scan who else is in the room with you, and also have the courage to call people out, right? Have the courage to say, hey, not allowed here. We don't want to, that's not the conduct for this venue or this space, whether virtual or in person. So the moderator function and role is super duper important to foster, cultivate sort of that diversity and inclusion that this industry needs.
And no different than all other industries too, right? These are societal issues now that have really come to light in bigger ways than they have, but they've been longstanding. And it's up to the business leaders to go affirmatively take charge and to change things.
Yeah, and following up on that a little bit in a different direction, so much of our society is, celebrity driven in terms, especially in the sports entertainment space. And a lot of what brings fans to a sport in the first place might be a particular player. So fans of a different generation who became more passionate fans of the NBA because of Michael Jordan, for example, or now Steph Curry, or came to golf because of Tiger Woods. And I'm wondering if the esports leagues are at the point now where there are certain standout players that are now becoming more commonly known, maybe cross over into the mainstream being known. And then one thing that might help bring along more female players or people LGBT, with some of those people who are being very successful in the sport started to become the face of esports. And where does that stand in terms of there being some emerging stars that younger players would aspire to be like, look up to, in terms of a bit of hero worship, and become more passionate about the sport because their hero is someone they want to follow in terms of their performance on Fortnite or the other games?
The great question. The two that pop to my head are Shroud and Ninja. Definitely Ninja, especially from his notoriety with Fortnite. But it's a really good question, because outside of a handful, like, I'm in the industry and all of a sudden I'm blanking on, no, I haven't got them for you. And I think what you get in esports, it's a little bit different, is the jumping from game to game. because we treat it like it's one thing and it's not. And so it would be, well, Tom Brady's super famous, right? 7 Super Bowls, great. And then all of a sudden he shows up at the Tampa Bay Rays and he's pitching lights out. And you're like, what? How did Bo Jackson was the last professional athlete to pull that trick off? People in esports will sometimes jump between games because they're just really good. And the different audiences following the different teams, like the dynamic is different. So I'm probably making excuses for the fact I don't know who my top stars are. It's, we do a lot of work at the sort of the collegiate community level. I can tell you right now, I couldn't even tell you the top college sport. I wouldn't even know where to find them because there's so many divisions right now. So that's a huge opportunity. There's a lot of streamers, a lot of people pulling down big numbers in streams, but that mass market celebrity, when they cross that number, that's really going to blow this thing up.
Yeah, I think what is interesting though are companies like HyperX, who is a product company, a technology company, who have started this initiative of developing the HyperX Heroes, and they have recruited the likes of Gordon Hayward, who is an avid gamer off the court. And he's got little kids at home who he games with. And so Juju Smith is another one of their HyperX heroes. And I think they're doing it right because I know HyperX has also started to look for, again, the female and minority, people of color, celebrities, influencers. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be, film, TV, musical artists. It's now kind of like the latest, popular influencer online, YouTube, TikTok, what have you. And I think for these, either newfound celebrities or athletes, professional athletes like a Gordon Hayward, it actually gives them even more a greater value in personal branding, right? And it gives their fans another inside look at the life of that hero or that celebrity, that pro athlete, in a different way. So I think, like Scott, I can't quite tell you who the number one esports celebrity is. I'm sure there's so many, because I think it is, like I said before, the content creator trend is definitely alive and well in the esports community. So, yeah.
Your question though is dead on. I mean, it's hard to promote a logo. It's hard to promote a game or a team, but once then you bring the human element where you have the person and people get to know the person and the person is relatable and the person's a role model, it then takes it to a different degree in sort of marketing, promoting, and growing your sport. You try to get those personalities out there. As teams that wear helmets, try to get the helmets off so people can go see who that athlete is and what they look like. But I think it is a very important element, and one that esports, I'm sure, will embrace at some point. They will get some brand ambassadors out there.
Yeah, and sometimes it's not even necessarily the best player. Sometimes it's a really good player, but has a certain personality or charisma, or there's a lot of intangible factors that go into who that person or who those people might end up being in terms of the face of the sport. So,
I wonder if there's one other dynamic about esports that's different than traditional sports, and I don't know to what degree it's a factor. When I see somebody do a physical sport, I see them do the thing. I see them take the shot. I see them run. I see them skate. And so I'm connecting the entertainment product directly with that person. In esports, they're sitting in a chair, right? And Karen and I know this. The human beings playing video games are not super interesting to look at. The games are super interesting to look at, but there's one layer removed between the individual effort. And it's something we would do when we were working with young kids, is try to help the parents understand your child is the one in the pink, that little pink thing bouncing. That's your kid, right? Is helping them connect the esport athletes' effort with what they're seeing on the screen. Because I'm actually stunned that I can't think of the names of the top players. I'm like, yeah, why is that so hard that they're not crossing over to the same zeitgeist that you get from traditional sports? And it might be that one level of interaction is you got to close the gap.
Yeah, you can close the gap through storytelling platforms. I mean, some of the highest rated shows on TV are about storytelling. People watch American Idol. It's part about singing, but it's more about the storytelling, about the lives of all these people. And esports is just perfect for that. You know, American Ninja Warrior, that show you watch, it's all about storytelling about those people competing. And, you know,
right.
Sports can get that same platform. It should be very beneficial.
It's something that ABC realized a number of decades ago, where some of the more obscure Olympic sports were having problems generating interest, and they realized that doing those, what they used to call up close and personal background stories on the athletes and the hardships they overcame to get to where they are is what made it really compelling and got people to watch the events, because now they knew the backstory of the people. So it may be something where the sports maybe took a concerted effort and took someone who is really good at the sport and has an interesting story and starts to create the mythology around that person. It might be something that may not happen organically because, as you said, they're sitting in a chair, but the sport might conceivably make a concerted effort to try to elevate the profile of some of the players that have a compelling life story behind them. Could be interesting. Before we get into, we want to finish up with a little bit of career advice and leave some time for you to impart some insight about how students might get their foot in the door in terms of a career in sports or esports. One other area I thought we might touch on briefly is the changing in the way that people consume sports through media, and more, especially younger fans, are less apt to watch a linear sports event for 3 hours from beginning to end, and more likely to consume highlights. Major League Baseball realize that now makes highlights available for fans to watch and put together in their own highlight reels and so forth. And from my understanding, those last couple of days, the NFL is seriously talking with Amazon for Amazon to to stream their Thursday night primetime games. And so I'm wondering, from the standpoint of media and how that's likely to have an impact in the way that media deals are constructed, the role of social media companies in some ways now competing with the mainstream traditional networks and sports, and in esports, where it stands in terms of media contracts. I know there's specialized networks for esports, Twitch and so forth, but where do you see the media landscape evolving, and maybe specifically where esports would fit into the media landscape?
I can take the non-esports part of it. What we see is each round that leagues go to selling their rights, it seems inconceivable that the next one can go higher. And the next one always goes not higher, but exponentially higher. And with the advent of streaming services potentially and other new technology coming into the bidding process, we're probably going to see more of that, as well as layering in potential online gambling, also intensifying what could be the bidding to get more eyeballs actually watching. So the leagues are quite expert on licensing their rights, licensing them out in multiple ways, and figuring out the best way not only to maximize their rights fees for the main games, but also for going out and using new media in order to push out storytelling and highlights and videos and all sorts of other ways in order to reach all their different audiences, because their audiences are very different, and a lot of it just does depend on age and generation. And every time you push it out, it's a marketing and promotional opportunity to capture that fan to your sport and to your business for life. And they see that opportunity, and they seize that opportunity. So I think this all represents positive things for sports and entertainment. and the more possible ways in order to get your product distributed to your fans and your audience in ways that are convenient and comfortable for them is far better for you in the long run, because these businesses in the end, they're all about your customers.
That's right. I think any enterprise is always looking to meet their consumers where they are at, right? So if you know, esports or just the general audience is watching on their phone or their mobile device, you know, so be it, and give them that ability to watch on their phones. Hence the big, you know, cell phone carriers offering it up as, you know, buy from us and you get, you know, access to, you know, Disney Plus or Netflix for however much. So I think that these creative media deals or just business deals to make sure that they are meeting the customers where they want to consume the entertainment, the sport, the what have you, the media is they're right there for it. I mean, what's exciting to me is our mixed reality technology like VR, like AR, like, you know, these things that have a, you know, could have a very direct impact on the video game industry, because now that's yet another new medium for consuming, you know, information or entertainment. So it's really about meeting your customers where they want to shop, to watch, and to be entertained, right? So
I think there's another factor, and it comes to, we told this generation watching us, don't just be consumers. And we thought that meant stuff. And for them, it's also, for you, the audience, it's the content. You want to, like, that's the big innovation on Twitch, is the potential for the audience to participate with the performers while they're performing. And when you take, like, I think one of the things that was like an early precursor to that, and it sounds strange, is fantasy football. You get to assemble your own team. So all of a sudden you personally have a vested stake in not just one team, but like players across the whole league. And that became an entire industry. Now we're seeing, like, okay, I see some gray hairs here. Remember, Michael Jackson Thriller was like, who could imagine an album so big? And then it was like, well, every summer we're going to have a giant release. Platinum is no big deal. What happened with Queen's Gambit? Netflix puts out a show, or Amazon, I forget who had it. Queen's Gambit, you can't get a weighted chess set in this country right now. It was like overnight, boom, they're gone. What we're starting to see is this merger that whether it's esports, whether it's a show, whether it's professional sports, this is now connecting to an experience you can have as a consumer. You can begin to participate and connect in ways we never could before. And that's turning into digital, you know, the distribution and online shopping. So we're actually beginning to shape culture in a way that only Disney did for decades. Like, look at the properties Disney has. I mean, they touch men and female culture cradle to grave, from Baby Mickey all the way up to, they own ESPN, they've got the ABC network, and they just have all these properties that people identify with. We're starting to see that happen in sports and esports as well. It's not just something to consume, it's something to participate in. And I think that's the thing we're going to get really good at over the next 10 years, is doing that more intentionally with better support. So you can get the weighted chess set and they don't run out on you. But like those experiences, whether it's going to be what they're starting to do with VR basketball now, what they're starting to do, you know, we're esports we've seen blow up, but I think this crossover is only going to accelerate.
Great. So my final question is, in the Zarb School, we have an MBA specialization in sports and entertainment marketing, and we're excited about starting an undergraduate major in sports marketing. And we'll be here to give students a great education in the field. But what would you recommend that students who want to pursue a career in sports and entertainment in the industry do to supplement their studies in the field and prepare them for a career in sports entertainment marketing?
Well, I got to look at Hank for that.
yeah.
Well, I think it's what you're trying to do for your students right now, right? You're trying to give them practical knowledge. You're trying to give them the education. You're trying to teach them sports marketing right there, make them experts in the areas that they want to go into. But that expertise in the classroom needs to be transferred into expertise in business itself. And I know you're working actively on trying to set up internship programs with various different teams and leagues in the area. And there are lots of them, like you have with the New York Open and the Riptide and other organizations. And students, they need to take those internships, and they need to get out there, and they need to figure out whether to volunteer or just get in. So get the best education you can get in the area and figure out how to get in and get started. Because once you're in, it changes the game from when you're out. And get your resume out, get the lists, and you got to hustle for it. And you can get there. The good news, especially in the market where Hofstra resides, is there are lots of teams. The sports leagues reside here, so there are probably more sports marketing opportunities in the New York area than anywhere else in the country. So they're there, and you got to hustle.
Is general advice what I would share is it's going to change. So what you've learned, what you've proven to yourself is how to learn, and that should stay with you your entire career. And remember, especially if you're getting into sports or something like eSports, it's competitive. So you probably got in this because you like to compete. That doesn't stop. Every one of these positions is contested for. A lot of people want them, and they tend to go to the people that are most prepared. And in my experience, the people that best understand the problem the hiring manager is trying to solve. And if you can line your skills up with the problem the hiring manager is trying to solve, then that seems to magically shift you up near boy, that's somebody I'd like to have on my team. The single biggest piece of advice I get people coming out of school is, I don't like to receive a blank resume because you've given me a problem. I have to figure out how you're useful to me. If you can explain how you're useful to me, you've jumped up, you've solved me. Already you're showing me you're going to help me solve problems I'm trying to solve. So how to learn, just keep getting better at it. And don't give up. Keep going after it.
And all the only thing I will add is ABC, always be connecting. And I mean in terms of networking with people and companies and brands that you are interested in, but also always be connecting the dots. Always look up and out at the marketplace, the landscape, scan the landscape. How are different technological advances changing? What impact is that going to have in the industry and the career, in the job that you are looking for? So, ABC, always be connecting.
That's great. And I guess that takes us to the end of our session. It was extremely informative, great insights, and I really appreciate the time of our panelists, Hank, Karen, and Scott, and we appreciate you being and sharing your time with us today.